Hey y'all, it's Mocha Mima. Welcome to my channel. Here I go with more politics. I told you, y'all, I have to keep my people informed. I gotta do what I gotta do to let y'all know. Even if it touches one person, that's good enough for me. One person tell another person, and so on and so on. So, Madam Vice President Kamala Harris, she put in her work this week. I wanted to let you all know what she did. She had a meeting to discuss the societal impact of artificial intelligence. You know, artificial intelligence is a big thing this week. That's part of the reason why the writer's strike is going on because AI basically they want to replace us, y'all. It's crazy. So she sat down with some business people to talk about that. She delivered remarks at the Gila River Tribal Nation event. That is an indigenous event that she went to, and she spoke to the people there. And also, she was with Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. They convened with disability rights leaders to discuss transportation accessibility, which is important. You may think, oh, that doesn't concern me, but it concerns other people who may have to take public transportation. And when they talk transportation, transportation is a range of things. So I'm grateful to her and the work that she puts in. Also, she put out a statement about the student loan relief that came through yesterday with her and President Biden got together and with student loan relief. So I'm gonna post that letter up for you. Um, Hold on, y'all. Let me pull up the letter, and then I'll read it in its entirety. Hold on one moment. All right, y'all. So y'all may say, why is Mocha Mima coming on with it? We want to know the tea, this and the other. Y'all, this is tea, but this is just a different type of tea. Listen, there's a creator that I follow on TikTok. His name is Conscious Lee. Conscious Lee says, education is elevation. Y'all, listen, you got to know what's going on, or else you're going to be hoodwinked and bamboozled. So, this is a statement from Vice President Kamala Harris on additional student loan forgiveness. President Joe Biden and I are committed to delivering relief to student loan debt borrowers to help them move forward with their lives, whether they want to start a family, buy a home, or become an entrepreneur. Today, we are taking another historic step by forgiving $39 billion dollars in student loan debt for 804,000 borrowers who have been paying down their debts for 20 years or more should qualify for relief. Instead, many were placed into forbearance by loan servicers in violation of the rules, and others did not get appropriate credit for their monthly payments. Addressing these harmful practices and reducing student loan debt has been a priority throughout my career. As California Attorney General, I won $1 billion for defrauded veterans and students taking on predatory for profit colleges. We will not stop there. Last month, President Biden announced we are pursuing an alternative path to provide relief through the Higher Education Act, and we finalized our new income-driven repayment plan, which will cut monthly payments in half for undergraduate loans. Our administration will continue to fight to make sure Americans can access high quality post secondary education without taking on the burden of unmanageable student loan debt. Thank you. Thank you so much. That's what I say to that. I appreciate it. I have some student loans, which the majority of which, if we had gotten that $20,000, would have been discharged. It would have left me with like a $10,000 balance, which is pretty much manageable. But even if they can reduce the interest, whatever they could do, you know what I mean, will help. So I'm hoping that some stuff, comes through, and then, oh, excuse me, y'all for yawning. Then that'll be all done. So shout out to the Biden administration for trying to do something. So naysayers, shut up and knock it off. Because if the other people get in, then y'all gonna be crying and complaining, and I ain't trying to hear it. So anyway, I'm gonna play the videos I spoke about earlier with Vice President Kamala Harris. I'll play those videos so you guys can see what she was doing this week. Let's just let it play in the background. Listen to what she was going on. The videos are not long at all, you know. So with that, y'all, please like and subscribe. Click on the bell button for the uploads. I appreciate each and every one of you. And have a good rest of your day. Peace.
Welcome to the White House, all of you. We're so excited to have this amazing group for an important conversation. It's my privilege to get to introduce our host, Vice President Harris. Many of you already know her. I was reflecting on how perfect this moment is because we have sitting in this seat a vice president who has spent so much of her career advancing civil rights and advancing consumer protections. She was Attorney General. Listen to this list. When she was Attorney General in the state of California when I was living there, and in her work there, she protected seniors from online scammers. She protected women and girls from online harassment. She protected consumers from privacy breaches. And she established the Privacy Enforcement and Protection Unit within the California Department of Justice. And she was just getting started because then she came to the United States Senate and was on the Intelligence Committee and on the Judiciary Committee. She introduced a bipartisan bill to address cyber crimes and exploitation. She pushed the FBI and the FTC on algorithmic bias. So now think about that list of what she's just done and think about the huge challenges that we've got ahead of us for artificial intelligence. It is hard to imagine anyone with more pertinent experience and capabilities than the vice president we've got sitting in this seat. The vice president convened a group of AI CEOs in the early part of May and brought them together here at the White House to hold them accountable for their role in how AI plays out. She said to them, you have not only a legal but a moral responsibility to make sure that your products are safe before they go out into the world. And that was a prelude to this very important meeting so that we can focus on civil rights and consumer protection. So we are so lucky to have you in your seat. Madam Vice President, over to you.
Thank you, Director Prabhakar. Thank you, and for your leadership and your hard work with all of these issues that really do affect every person in our country in a variety of ways. I want to first thank all of the leaders for taking the time to be here for this meeting. As I shared with you, I intend to listen as much as I will talk. In fact, I intend to listen more than I talk because I want to hear from you. The President wants to hear from you. We want to know from your perspective, how will the various people in our country be impacted by this issue, which is the issue of how AI will affect their lives in a variety of ways, whether it be through the life that they live as a senior and what their strengths may be, but also their vulnerabilities, through the lens of workers and what this means in terms of their work life and the protections and the rights that they are entitled to, whether we're thinking about it in terms of how it impacts children, how it impacts the future of industries, how it impacts the economy of our country. There are so many components to this. There is the component that has been, I think at this point, well documented about the concern, legitimate concern that many of us have about how racial bias and other types of biases will impact the lives of people because of AI and what we must do to get in front of that. And I think the first part of this issue that should be articulated is AI is kind of a fancy thing. It's, first of all, it's 2 letters. It means artificial intelligence. But ultimately what it is it's about machine learning. And so the machine is taught. And part of the issue here is what information is going into the machine that will then determine And we can predict then, if we think about what information is going in, what then will be produced in terms of decisions and opinions that may be made through that process. So to reduce it down to its most simple point, this is part of the issue that we have here, is thinking about what is going into a decision and then whether that decision is actually legitimate and reflective of the needs and the life experiences of all people. And therefore, a big part of what we will also discuss then is the transparency in terms of the processes through which AI actually is having an impact on decisions. Do we understand the technology? Do we know what is going into the decisions that are being made? So this is a very multifaceted issue and topic, and we also know that that this is technology that is rapidly developing. And so part of the common purpose that we have is a sense of urgency that we get in front of this issue in terms of understanding the implications so that we can work as a community of folks, private sector, public sector, nonprofits, government, to do what is in the best interest of the health and safety and well-being of the people of our country. And ultimately, that's how I think about this. So I want to thank everyone here. The issues are, again, it's going to be about privacy. It's going to be about the concern that we have about what this might mean in terms of workers and workplaces. The issue that is a very big concern for all of us, which is about misinformation and disinformation. Increasingly a concern, especially as we also know that there may be a reduction of resources that are going into this issue, and what we must then collectively do when we agree that no one benefits from the widespread of misinformation and disinformation. And then, of course, the concern that we have about threatening just basic rights that all people have to be treated as equals and not have biases inform the way that they are treated. I would also ask that as part of the way we think about this as a community of people, that we understand that it is a false choice to suggest that we either can advance innovation or we protect consumers. We can do both. As the director has said, I have spent a great deal of my career working on this issue, and always guided by the belief that innovation has so much possibility to improve the condition of human life. And to the extent that we can encourage that approach, we should. We should not dampen or in any way slow down innovation that can improve the condition of people's lives. And we must also ensure that in that process, we are not trampling on people's rights. We are not suppressing the rights that people have, whether it be in the workplace, whether it be privacy rights or other types of rights. So a guiding principle for us and for our administration is that we reject a false choice that suggests it's one or the other, and that we will go forward in a way that is to encourage innovation, but in a way that is about protecting consumers and protecting all people who may be vulnerable to unintended consequences. In particular, I think about seniors. As the director has said, I've done a lot of work through my career, predominantly as a prosecutor, being concerned about the vulnerability of our seniors and the need to ensure that they have the information that is important to equip them with the ability to not fall prey to predators. It is about establishing protections, knowing that certain people will be targeted based on their socioeconomic status, based on their race, based upon their disability status. I just convened a group of folks yesterday, disability rights activists, and we want to make sure that we are cognizant of and intentional about those populations of people that are particularly vulnerable. And then we want to make sure that we are thinking about the impact of this on our systems of justice. And as someone who has worked on criminal justice reform, like many of you at this table, and with many of you at this table, we want to make sure that in those systems where we know bias has already existed, that this does not then enhance or exacerbate the concerns we have about the outcomes in those systems. So with all of that, I will say that this issue is ultimately about consumer rights. It is about privacy. It is about an investment in innovation, but all the while, and certainly for us in our role, having as our first priority the health, safety, and well-being of the people of our country. And so with that, I thank you all for being here. We are going to continue to do this work together with a sense of urgency and a commitment to solutions. So with that, I thank you all. And Director, thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Press, see you later. We're going to now move on out.
Great. Well, I have the honor of kicking us off. I'm Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. I want to thank all of you for being here. By way of a visual description, I'm wearing a blue suit, seated next to the Vice President in the middle of our U-shaped table here at the White House, and we're delighted to be with you, and of course I'm very honored to be here alongside Vice President Harris. We know that our country would not be the country that it is today if it weren't for the tireless work of so many disability advocates, from nonprofit leaders to community voices to elected officials, who have spent careers and lives advocating for transformative legislation like the Americans with Disabilities Act. The ADA is unquestionably one of the most significant pieces of civil rights legislation in American history. It expanded rights for 1 in 4 people in our country, and it transformed every aspect of Americans' lives for the better. Having said that, it's worth remembering that at the time it was being debated, the ADA faced a great deal of opposition. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce said that it would have, quote, a disastrous impact on many small businesses struggling to survive, end quote. A congressman, I'm afraid from my own home state, said it would crush, quote, crush small and medium-sized businesses. And the nation's largest bus company predicted that the ADA would, if passed, quote, deprive millions of people of affordable intercity public transportation. Of course, none of those things turned out to be true. Instead, our schools, our workplaces, our communities, our businesses have changed so much for the better that it is difficult to imagine life in America without the ADA. So it is fitting this month, as we mark the anniversary of the ADA, to recommit to our efforts to ensure that people with disabilities can move freely and fairly through every part of their lives, including by means of our transportation systems. To give you an example of some of the work going on this, we've been taking a number of major steps to improve the safety and dignity of air travel. Last year, I had an opportunity to speak with Charles Brown, a Marine Corps veteran and then president of the Paralyzed Veterans of America, who shared the story of how airline staff once dropped him onto the jet bridge while removing him from his wheelchair during boarding, leading to his tailbone being broken and causing an infection that almost cost him his life. And while not every story is that dramatic, I have heard so many stories from friends, including many wheelchair users in this room, about the multiple situations that you have faced dealing with airline travel as wheelchair users. And it's why we've begun laying the preliminary groundwork for a rule that will make it possible for passengers to stay in their own wheelchairs when they fly, affording them the same dignity that so many Americans count on in other forms of transportation. We have also awarded billions of dollars through the infrastructure law that has been led by the Biden-Harris administration to modernize airport terminals, including adding wheelchair ramps, accessible restrooms, and more. And because civil rights are only meaningful when enforced, we are calling on Congress to pass legislation that will ensure that passengers with disabilities can pursue legal action against airlines that violate their rights. Beyond aviation, we're working with automakers to ensure the vehicles of the future, including automated vehicles, serve people with disabilities well. And last December, we awarded nearly $700 million through the infrastructure law to retrofit older rail and subway stations, adding elevators, ramps, and other improvements in a piece of the legislation that was championed by Senator Tammy Duckworth. Now, we know that even with these steps and even with the knowledge of all the good that the ADA has done for America, there are those who will push back on this work too, claiming that it's putting too great of a burden on airlines or automakers or transit agencies. But again, I think it bears remembering that that's exactly what they said about the ADA itself. 33 years ago. And history proved that view wrong, and I think it will do the same as we look forward. The reality is that improving accessibility benefits everyone in our country, those with disabilities, those who will age into disability, and everybody else. Because when we empower millions of Americans to live their lives to their fullest potential, we are not only empowering them to thrive, but also ensuring that the country can benefit from their contributions. And with that, it is my great honor to introduce a leader who understands this so well. As Attorney General of California, she helped to shut down predatory health insurance fraudsters whose operation would have disproportionately impacted people with disabilities. As a leader in the United States Senate, she authored legislation that always considered the unique needs of people with disabilities. And as Vice President, she has spoken powerfully about the intersection of accessibility and other civil rights, particularly reproductive freedom and voting rights. So it is my great honor to introduce the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris.
Thank you, Secretary Buttigieg. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. As we have blind and low vision folks here today, I will describe what I'm wearing. I'm wearing a lavender color suit and a flag pin, and seated here with all of the colleagues and friends at a U-shaped table. Thank you, Secretary Buttigieg, for your work, for your leadership. As we know, when we think about this movement, which is the fight for the rights, the dignity, for equality, equity, for folks with disabilities, the issue of transportation is a very foundational and fundamental one, and you have been a great leader on this and many other issues through your role of leadership of the Department of Transportation. So I thank you for that. Former Representative Tony Coelho will be joining us when he gets through security, I believe, downstairs, but it is important to recognize his longstanding leadership on this issue, and he continues to be a fighter for all of these rights. So to everyone here, I thank you again. There are many longstanding colleagues and friends in this movement, and thank you again for accepting the invitation to have this important discussion. And as I said before the press came in, for my benefit, mostly so I can hear from you and understand and get feedback from you about the status of where we are in terms of the movement and where we have yet to go. So I want to thank you all for that. So let's start with a fundamental point. Every person in our nation has a fundamental right to participate fully in our society and to determine their own future. The right to self-determination, the right to dignity. And we, as members of a civil society, have a duty. It is not about a whim or a desire, but a duty to ensure that that promise is a reality for all people in our country. And it is with that spirit that we approach this movement, this work, this fight, and this convening today. And the fight for disability rights, Tony Coelho, a great leader in this fight, has been a fight longstanding for dignity and for opportunity and for self-determination, the right of self-determination of all people. So this month, we of course celebrate then a milestone in that fight, which is the 33rd anniversary of the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And of course, we can't celebrate these last 33 years with also remembering Judy Heumann, who of course we lost this year, who was a tireless champion. And we will always remember her as being present, actually, always in the work that we are doing. So we celebrate today and this month the progress that we have made, but we also then recommit clear-eyed to the work that we still have yet to do. People with disabilities still face incredible challenges in participating fully in our society. And we have to be responsible and truthful about where we are and what we must yet do. Voting rights, for example. I was proud to convene a group of many of the leaders who are here many months ago to discuss on the issue of voting rights how folks with disability are directly impacted by laws that are being passed in various states that, in my opinion, many are intentional in the desire to make it more difficult for people to vote, not to mention the status quo before those laws, which has created incredible obstacles for people with disabilities to be able to exercise their legal right to have a voice in the future of their country and their government. I've heard stories of polling stations, for example, without ramps. I've heard stories of individuals going to the polling place asking for a private place where they can then, in a private way, register and submit their vote, and having to have the courage, which we shouldn't have to require people to speak in a crowded room about the need to have accommodations, not being given the dignity to just go in and have those accommodations and be able to vote. On reproductive health care, and we know that since the Dobbs decision, which took that constitutional right from the people of America to make those kinds of decisions for themselves and not have the government decide what is in their best interest, on this issue, we have heard and have learned and know about the disproportionate impact of reproductive restrictions on people with disabilities. For example, for people who live in states that have essentially banned access to reproductive health care, the challenges that are then presented in terms of, again, Secretary, the need to be able to then travel to another state where they will have access to that reproductive health care, and the requirement that then is imposed on them of trying to figure that out through mechanisms that they may not be friendly to or adaptable to their specific needs. Small businesses. A lot of the work that we've been doing with small businesses takes into account that we have to address the barriers to access to capital that folks and small business owners with disabilities face. What am I talking about there? There's still bias in the system around making decisions about who should have access to capital based on some false assumption about who could actually run a small business, who could actually do the work of growing a small business. Are they capable? Some very fundamental issues are at play in terms of the work that we still have to do to have a society that treats all people fairly and equally. And then, of course, one of the most recent issues that has been a topic of discussion around our country among many people, the issue of AI. So let's think about that in terms of algorithms that are being written and employed for a variety of decisions that are being made, including employment decisions, and how ingrained bias, because it still exists in our society about folks with disabilities, can and may be integrated into those algorithms in terms of making decisions in a way that could discriminate against people with disabilities. So we still have a lot of work to do. But today is a day to mostly celebrate the accomplishments that have been achieved since Tony Coelho and so many at this table have been leading this movement. And I again want to thank the Secretary for your work. This issue of transportation is fundamentally about just making sure that people have the ability to get where they need to go. It's that basic. But we know the obstacles to that goal can be great. And for example, when we think about air travel, as the Secretary mentioned, a majority of domestic flights still have no accessible restrooms. When we think about the stories that I've heard of individuals with disabilities knowing that they may not be able to access the restroom on a plane, and what they must do to deprive themselves of food or liquids for hours and hours before that flight, out of concern that they may need to then take care of themselves, but have no access to the ability to do that because that restroom on that plane just does not physically allow that to happen. This is an issue fundamentally, again, about what is morally right, what is right in a society where we say that we prioritize and value the dignity of each human being to be able to live a full life. So with that, I want to thank everyone again. The solutions are at hand. We're going to be announcing some of those solutions very soon. But in conclusion, I would say that an accessible America is a better America. And I want to thank everyone for your leadership. And Tony, would you mind, I know this is a bit off script, but would you mind sharing some of your thoughts before we get into the rest of the meeting?
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I'm sorry everything went wrong today. First off, I just was prepared to say that this is the most pro-disability administration that I have ever seen, and I've been involved in 7 different administrations. Nobody comes close. And you start with President Biden. He was one of the original sponsors of the ADA. Vice President Harris was very involved in disability issues when she was Attorney General, when she was a U.S. Senator, and now what she does now in regards to all kinds of different issues that she's talked about, the same way. She is very aggressively supportive of our efforts, and we appreciate that. Secretary Buttigieg, I've known him, and I went up to him one time when he was speaking, and I said, I'm very impressed. You're going to go someplace at some point. And now here I am sitting with him as on the President's cabinet, which I'm very happy. Transportation, as the Vice President said, is a critical issue for our community. And to have people that oriented towards that and staff that you have, Pete, I think it's fabulous, and I applaud you for it. So with all that, the only last thing I'll say is Carmel Martin, I've known for 6 years. She works her tail, she works hard in making sure that our community is included in everything that we've wanted. So I appreciate her as well, and I think our community should know that. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
Thank you, the great Tony Coelho. And with that, I'll thank the press for being here, and we're going to now begin our meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
Please welcome Governor of the Gila River Indian Community, Stephen Lewis.
How's everybody doing? Is the Gila River Indian Community waiting to welcome our Vice President, Kamala Harris? So what about Miss Gila River giving that beautiful national anthem in our Octum Yonk? And what about Miss Seneca Jackson? Wow, how did she do? Skugtash, Vustich Amwi, Anyanap Chukat, Governor Stephen Rowe Lewis of the Gila River Indian Community. Shape Masma. Zapo. Okay, we're doing good here at Gila Crossing Community School. I know you are all excited and proud, as I am, that we're hosting Vice President Kamala Harris today for her first visit to Indian country. What a great day for our community and for all of Indian country. Now, on behalf of myself, Lieutenant Governor Monica Antone, our Community Council, let's give them a round of applause. And all of Indian country. Now, on behalf, I would like to also welcome all of our community members, the elected leaders of all of the 22 tribes here in Arizona, and tribal members across from this great state. Let's give them a round of applause as well. And a special welcome and thanks to our elders, our veterans, and youth who are such a critical part of today's program. Let's give them a round of applause as well. Now, I'm especially proud to be hosting the Vice President because it gives us an opportunity to express our deep appreciation to the Biden-Harris administration for their true partnership and investment in the community and tribes across the country. The community has a tradition of working successfully with our administration partners based on our sovereign status and the nation-to-nation relationship. But this administration, the Biden-Harris administration, has taken partnership to a whole new level, bringing tribes genuinely to the table and working with us on important investments and solutions for each tribe's unique needs. Here on the community, I can easily point to our successful partnership with the Biden-Harris administration on so many items, from federal funding for the widening project on I-10 to new investments in tribal government buildings, this school, our police department, and our public safety buildings, which have been built using our innovative 105L leasing program, with more to come, I want to add. Also, to our unique partnership with the administration in crafting innovative and important solutions to the mega drought that we're all facing here in this region. And Vice President Harris has truly been at the center of these efforts, as I know firsthand. Now, earlier this year, we spoke briefly during a visit she made to our state to visit a solar project here in Arizona. And during that brief meeting, I happened to mention one of the community's more innovative projects to address drought and to rapidly introduce solar power to the community, our solar-covered canal project. But while brief, the Vice President immediately had her staff follow up, and I met with the Vice President's office shortly thereafter to have more of an in-depth discussion on this project. It could have ended there, but the Vice President then invited me to join her at her residence for the Earth Day celebration this past year, purposefully bringing me together with philanthropic funders who are interested in the community's ideas for solar-covered canals, which has since led to a very productive dialogue that I'm hopeful will lead to investment and expansion of this groundbreaking way to save water and tackle the root cause of the drought we are facing, climate change. This is the kind of partner Vice President Harris is to Indian country. And she has been with Indian country throughout her career. And now we have a full partner in the White House, a partner who shares and respects the values we all hold dear as O'odham and Peeposh, as Gila River Indian community across Indian country. Protecting our children, our mothers, our families, protecting our country. These shared values are what bind us together in a common cause for the good of our community and for all of Indian country. It is truly my honor, my privilege, to welcome the Gila River Indian community, our partner and friend, the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris.
Please have a seat. And to the governor's mom and the aunties, hi. Well, it is so wonderful to be here, and I just want to thank everyone for just the very warm welcome that my husband, Doug, the second gentleman of the United States, and I have received. It means so much to us, and it means so much to the President that we are able to be here with you to thank you for the partnership and the work that we have done and will continue to do together. Governor, I want to thank you in particular because we have seen each other now a number of times. We were proud, my husband and I, to receive you at our home. But importantly, your leadership and your work and your partnership has been tremendous. And so I thank you for all of that and, of course, for the introduction you gave me this afternoon. I also want to thank all the tribal leaders who are here, the young Native leaders who are here. They are truly an inspiration. I was able to meet with some of the younger leaders before I came out here, and when I look at them, I know the future of our world is so bright. I'm also grateful for the veterans who are here with us. many of whom just met with the second gentleman of the United States, my husband, Doug Emhoff. And he's the first second gentleman of the United States. But on the point of the meeting that you had, the veterans who are here, those who have served, it's an extraordinary aspect of the history of the military. Native Americans have served this country in every major conflict in the past 200 years. And today, Native Americans serve in uniform at the highest rates of any population. So as Vice President, I thank you for your bravery and for your service. And I thank everyone for joining us today. So President Joe Biden and I believe that the bonds between our nations are sacred. And we believe we have a duty to safeguard and strengthen those bonds, to uphold our trust and treaty obligations, to honor tribal sovereignty, and to ensure tribal self-determination. On that point, it is a special honor to be at this beautiful school today. Gila River was the first tribe to partner with the federal government through an innovative leasing program to build a school that is fully Native-built, Native-owned, and Native-run. And as the governor said, I have worked with Native communities my entire career. I know projects like this are a representation of self-determination and a symbol of sovereignty. President Biden and I also believe that we have a duty to address the deep disparities that persist across Indian country. Disparities that are the result, and truth must be spoken, disparities that are the result of centuries of broken treaties, harmful assimilation policies, displacement, dispossession, and violence. And we have a duty to make sure that all Native people have the opportunity to thrive. To do so, we are committed to make sure all Native communities are places of economic opportunity. In this community, in every Native community across the country. There are people with big dreams for the future, people with the ambition and the aspiration to start a business, own a home, get an education, start a family. But turning a dream into reality requires, when we're talking about economic opportunity, requires access to capital and financial services. Home loans, small business loans, lines of credit. And as we know, many Native communities are cut off from these essential resources. In fact, Native households are more than 3 times as likely to lack access to traditional financial institutions. So to address this inequity, our administration, President Biden and I, have invested more than $500 million in Native entrepreneurs and small businesses. And we are investing millions more in community banks. Now, community banks, it almost speaks for itself, community banks. It's about the community. Community banks predominantly operate in overlooked and underserved communities. And they are run by people who live and work in the community that they serve. People who know firsthand the incredible potential in the community, people who understand the culture of the community, the language of the community, and people who then work every day to realize the potential of the community. So since taking office, the President and I and our administration have invested hundreds of millions of dollars in community banks that serve Native communities. Institutions in Arizona, like the Hopi Credit Association, which recently provided funds to a Native-owned coffee shop so they could invest in better kitchen equipment, new furniture, and more storage space. In partnership with communities, and in particular with Native communities, we are also addressing the climate crisis. This is something I spoke with the young leaders about before I walked in. Every year, the land your tribes have long called home have increasingly been threatened by wildfire, drought, and floods. Native peoples have served as responsible stewards of our environment for millennia. For millennia. And in order to create enduring solutions to the climate crisis, we must then rely on the knowledge and the experience of Native communities. And that is why we are investing billions of dollars to help fund Native-led, not Native-consulted, Native-led climate-resilient infrastructure projects. Like the projects you are leading here at Gila River. Projects to replenish groundwater, to build a new water pipeline to ensure reliable access to clean water, and to reduce dependence on the Colorado River. Together with Native communities, we are also working to protect the freedom to vote. In our democracy, the freedom to vote should be sacred. Every eligible voter has a fundamental right to cast a ballot and make their voice heard. But we know for Native Americans, that right has been hard fought and hard won. Native Americans were not universally granted U.S. citizenship until 1924. Even then, in many states, Jim Crow-style laws and policies denied many Native Americans access to the polls. And today we know that barriers to the ballot box still persist. Soon after taking office as Vice President, I convened a meeting on voting rights with Secretary Deb Haaland and Native American leaders, including Allie Young, a member of the Navajo Nation. Those leaders told us in no uncertain terms that the Native vote is under threat. Polling sites are too often hours away from where Native voters live. Ballots and voter information are too often not available in languages they speak. Postal service is irregular, and the use of tribal IDs has been denied. President Biden and I will continue to call on Congress to pass the Freedom to Vote Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, and the Native American Voting Rights Act. Together, these bills would set national standards for voting, such as 2 weeks of early voting, drop boxes in convenient locations, same-day automatic voter registration. For example, we have heard from many Native leaders, it was part of the conversation we had in my office, that it is so difficult to even register to vote because there is not an in-person registration site in the area, or because they do not have access to high-speed internet to register online. So to help more folks get registered to vote, we are also working to put voter registration sites in Indian Health Service locations. Yes. In addition, we are well on our way to connect every household with high-speed internet, which has been a high priority for us. And for so many, the point was highlighted during the height of the pandemic. Since taking office, President Biden and I are proud of the progress we have made in partnership with the leaders who are here. And we know we have much more to do. We must continue to fight to address the urgent crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous people. I feel very strongly about that. We must continue to fight to make sure all Native people, in particular all Native young people, have the mental health resources they need. Including uplifting their voices and encouraging them to talk about it, knowing that it is a sign of strength to seek help. And we must continue to defend the Indian Child Welfare Act. So I'll share with you a personal story. So last month, I hosted, at the home, Governor, where you visited, I hosted a dinner for the newest members of Congress, including Congresswoman Mary Patola. She is the first Alaska Native member of Congress. And she is a champion for all Native communities. And so that particular day, by coincidence, that same morning that I was hosting the dinner that evening, that same morning was the morning that the United States Supreme Court rejected that attempt to gut ICWA. And that night, then, as she arrived at the house, she and I just shared a special moment because we both understood what these attacks have meant, the failure to enforce the rules have meant, the failure to prioritize this, what it means. And so she and I basically shared, we hugged and we talked about it, a moment of profound relief and celebration, knowing the significance of this victory for tribal communities and tribal sovereignty, knowing for centuries Native children were taken from their families and community in violation of basic human rights, and it was an attack on the very existence of tribal nations. So I celebrate, as we all do, what happened at the court. But when you read closely the attacks and how the court ruled, let's be fully aware of not only the essential protection that ICWA provides, but also understand that whatever gains we make will not be permanent if we're not vigilant. You know, years ago, I was the head of the San Francisco City Attorney's Division on Families and Children, and I worked on many ICWA cases. And as Attorney General of California, I partnered with tribal leaders and child welfare agencies and others to enforce ICWA. So while we applaud the Supreme Court's decision, I am very clear-eyed. We know this will not be the last threat to this very important law, and we must continue to work together, and we will work with Native leaders to safeguard the protections of ICWA. And with that being said, together we will continue to work together in partnership toward a future where all of our children can realize their God-given potential, a better future for this generation and 7 generations to come. In that fight, together we will work to continue to strengthen this partnership, to count on your leadership, and to work together in support of our common cause. So may God bless you, and may God bless America. Thank you all.
Yeah. You make a like, now you don't like it. about to text me in a crisis. I believe that all of your dreams are duration. You took my heart, all my keys, and my patience. You took my heart, I must leave a decoration. You mistaken my love, I brought for you for foundation.